Hello and welcome back to Wingot Plays Nomifactory. Between episodes, I've had a bit of work done. Well, not really. I've done a fair bit of work. If we pop outside here, I think not much looks all that much different. But if we pop downstairs, there's a bit of a change. We've destroyed our crafting CPUs here. Our molecular assemblers and interfaces have all been removed, and frankly, most of this stuff has actually been turned off. I've also, you might notice some gaps in the processing machines here. That's because I've disabled a fair bit of this, and as I've disabled things, I've removed the machines that were sitting there. But why have I done all of that? Well, I'm glad you asked. If we pop up here into the control room and head to the space station, it looks a fair bit different to the last time that we were here. Down here, dead end. Nothing happening over here. Although, apparently, I've screwed up a few blocks there. Perfect. Over here, though, we have a tunnel that leads into some wings. This side here, not yet done. Over here, we've got our molecular assembler array, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, it's 10 deep and 10 per layer, so there's 100 molecular assemblers in there now. And we've got a few big crafting CPUs, but we've actually only got 3 crafting CPUs in total now, and I'm going to have to continue building that up. Over here, we've got some ME drives full of 64K storage cells. We've got a fair bit of dense energy cell power. And then if we pop over here, we have replaced pretty much our whole DML setup. In fact, I've turned off the DML setup over in the Void world and built this system here. So, Enderman, we've got 4 of those which can support 7 rows. This extra row here is overflow, and the only reason it's able to run is because not all of the machines in there are actually running, but it's trying to compensate for some for some high demand that we've got going on. But we've got the 4 Endermen, we've then got 15, I think there's 16 shulkers, which allows us to run. Over here, we've got 9 reinforced numismatic dynamos with 5 upgrades. So they can produce 12.5 thousand RF per tick. We've got 9 of them. And so in order to keep up with that, we actually need 16 shulkers to be able to keep up with that when it's at full demand. So we've got the shulkers there, and then we've basically got 1 of each of the other data models, plus a few extras. So we've got a spare couple of guardians, a spare couple of ghasts, and a spare zombie. And then over here we've got our loot fabricators with level emitters set to keep certain amounts in stock in our system for basically all of the outputs that you can get from the DML setup that are of any real use. Perfect. And then over here, we've replaced our pulsating polymer clay production with this EV model system. And then it's also producing excess of all of the cobblestone, stone, etc. Over here, we've started to build some processing arrays for here, alloy smelters. So these are all EV tier, and the alloy smelters do 16 at a time for pretty much everything in these alloy smelters. We've got electrical furnaces, which the interface outputs into a drawer controller, which then outputs into this storage drawer, and then there's a robot arm in each of these machines that then pulls from that request. And so we've heavily increased the throughput of our furnaces to make each of these things. And same over here for our compressors, for our wire mills, and for our extruders, which are making gears. Now, full credit, I saw this on Threefold, and I quite liked the design. Here's a bit bigger. I think there are 8 machines instead of my 4, but compared to the MV single machine that I had been using, even this system is a huge upgrade in throughput. We've got a quantum bridge here linking our 2 applied logistics systems, and we have a temporary setup here, but this will move into the main control area there, basically when I'm not using this area so actively. Over here we have basically automated processes for all of the standard components. We have silicon wafers being made automatically in a cutting machine here using lubricant being fed from the oil system. We have the various wafers, and then they get converted into the RAM central processing units and integrated circuits, and produce a 32 stacks of each of those to just sit in the system. Over here we've got a small pile of gallium, platinum wires, fine platinum wire, so that we can make our SMD diodes. We've got everything so that we can make our SMD capacitors, and then our SMD resistors. And over here, our SMD transistor. Anything that is only really used as a component for these, I've down limited so that it's only a single stack. But anything that gets used a fair bit in other areas, either I've got 32 stacks, or in this case, I've actually increased the amount that can sit in here with a 16 times storage upgrade, and so it'll just produce a very large quantity of electrum ingots. I think 64,000 is what that's aiming for at the moment. But we've got all of the SMDs being made passively, all of the RAM, CPU, etc. being made passively, and then here we've also got our circuit boards being made passively as well. Unfortunately, the epoxy circuit boards are basically limited by our epoxy resin, which is limited by the naphtha being produced by our oil system that we've set up previously, and so I'm going to see what I can do about increasing the throughput of this epoxy resin, because this does tend to be our limitation, is these epoxy circuit boards. You can see I've only got 31 there, and that's because pretty much whenever there's circuit boards there, I use them to craft additional machines and keep expanding our system. But we've got our fiber reinforced circuit boards, which are going to be used for the IV tier, the nano circuits, and the nano processors and arrays. So that's we've got that being passively produced, and it also will get used in the multi-layered fiber reinforced board, which is then used for our quantum level. So this is just being, and also crystal, this is just being produced in the background, and it also uses epoxy. Yes, yeah, it also uses epoxy to make these. So fiber reinforced epoxy resin, which is made here in a chemical bath, and so that also uses the epoxy. So that's also causing limitations. I just accidentally undid that. Good. So over time those will build up, but as I said, I'll have to see what I can do about increasing our epoxy throughput. And then finally over here we've got wrought iron, steel, dark steel, end steel, and electrical steel on Autocraft. And then finally over here we've replaced our aluminium production system. So basically we're just pulling in the clay, turning it into dust, electrolyzing it, and then we've got 2 drawers here, one which is full of aluminium dust at the top there, and then one which has a void upgrade for the other 3 dusts, the sodium, lithium, and silicon that you can get out of this process. And then over here we're also making the small coils, just using fine annealed copper wires and steel bolts. And then for each of these, we've just got an interface sitting at the back, providing 9 different items to the conduits, and there also potentially is various fluid interfaces providing things like the epoxy resin, the lubricant, the palladium, polyethylene, etc. that we need for those systems. Interesting that the polyethylene seems to have stopped, because I'm pretty sure it's not meant to have. But I'll have to go investigate that one later. Now over here we have reproduced, over here, so we've got end stone dust production. So basically we make sandstone, which then gets made into end stone using Enderpearl's sandstone and the extraterrestrial matter that we've got quite an excess of. Then the end stone gets pulverized into end stone dust, and then the end stone dust gets centrifuged, and we get sand, small pile of tungstate dust, and a tiny pile of platinum dust. Now, the tungstate dust is actually the primary thing we're aiming to get out of this system, but the platinum dust is also a nice bonus to be getting out of here, as there's no convenient way to get platinum at this stage. Then over here, we're just making tungstate dust and platinum dust into their dust forms, and then the tungstate dust plus hydrogen in the electrolyzer here makes our tungsten dust, which our tungsten dust then gets electric blast furnace into tungsten ingots. And we've got almost 1,000 tungsten ingots at this point. Very nice. Now, if we continue on, so lithium dust, I think we actually don't need that because we've got the lithium being auto-crafted over there, but the lithium dust is also being produced here. Yeah, tungsten and lithium and oxygen. We're voiding the oxygen, and the lithium is just going up to here as basically it's being collected, but it really doesn't need to be because, as I say, we've got it being auto-crafted over there. I've automated copper nickel, which is just nickel and copper, automated Invar, which is nickel and iron, and then here we're making obsidian automatically with our basic drawer. Sorry, with our igneous extruder. And that I will speed that up once we get a couple of auxiliary input coils. And then finally, here we were just starting up a new system. I'm making nickel ingots so that we can make nichrome ingots here in the blast furnace. But other than that, here I've grabbed our borax dust, and that because we need boron, and so that will electrolyze the borax to produce sodium and boron. The sodium dust should be getting destroyed in this trash can here. I just think I've set this here to the wrong color. This is meant to be extracting on blue. Good, now it's voiding the sodium. And then we just need to change this to insert on blue as well. And then this boron dust will be able to go up there. And I've already set it to put 4 boron dust here in this interface. But you can see the spare is going up there now. Also, the oxygen in here is being dumped into this fluid interface and is then, I believe, being voided back in the void world base. Now, we've got ferroboron being produced here because I had already set it up so that boron and steel could get put into that one there. And then we can change this to black. This should be inserting on black. And boom, we've got ferroboron. And again, 4 ferroboron get pulled out to feed this one, which is making our tough alloy, which is lithium plus ferroboron. And then if we put that in there, perfect. Good. So we've automated now the ferroboron and hard and tough alloy, and so those will just in time fill themselves up. It will eventually run out of borax because at the moment we only had about 2,000 borax to start with, and this is quite a hungry recipe. It uses 23 to make 4 boron. So It will run out of borax, and at that point it'll stop making these, but for now it's automatically converting all of our borax into boron, into tough alloy, into ferroboron, into tough alloy. Now I do wonder, ferroboron gets used to make alloy smelters, fine, but it also gets used to make servo mechanisms and linear actuators. Linear actuators are used for machine interfaces. Okay, don't look like we need that specifically. And then the servo mechanism is also only used to make the machine interface. Good, so we can afford to convert all of it into tough alloy, because the tough alloy is what's actually used for our various reactor cells, basic platings. Yeah, exactly. So for all the stuff that we need to make our actual reactor, which is what we're going to have to work on in order to get these, not early game, it's mid game, to get working on all of this nuclear fission side of things. Now, speaking of, you probably just noticed that there was changes to this quest book. The Genesis here is still the same. At the beginning, there's a few changes, but not too much. All of these extra chapters is a little interesting. Well, I can easily do that. But effectively, what's happened is I've updated to the dev version, which gave us access to a number of things. It changed a few small things, but one of the biggest things it did was it gave us access to processing arrays. These guys here, which we're going to want to get to, but they are IV tier, so they're not something I can actually produce yet. But they are something I will definitely be making as soon as they are available. Now, lastly, over here we've got the electric blast furnaces. We've got, and they're all automated. Now, as I said before, full credit to Threefold, who showed me a lot of this style of setup, and basically inspired me to get passive things set up. You might notice on top of some of these drawers, there's these level emitters, which basically is showing us when we're low on certain things. Over here, steel is the only thing we're low on. The others are all maxed out. There, we haven't even started making that. And then, of course, the two circuit boards that are limited by epoxy we're low on. But otherwise, we're actually pretty high or even full on everything else. The invar there, I should probably put a level emitter. The tough alloy, I should put one, maybe the nickel. And over here, yeah, blast furnaces. So we've got red alloy being produced. We've got silicon balls just automatically being produced. Aluminium, tungsten, and tungsten steel. Tungsten steel has two level emitters. One, which is set to only allow it to run if there's a certain amount of tungsten in the system. So it can only actually run if there is, let's say, 1,000 tungsten sitting here, which it's getting close to. So once there's 1,000 tungsten, we'll start building up our tungsten steel. We've got annealed copper, chrome, sterling silver, and nichrome all being automatically produced. And then down the end here, we've got a vacuum freezer, which just has a ore dictionary storage bus set to ingot hot, and so this automatically freezes the outputs of that system there. But fundamentally, that's what everything looks like on the inside. What does it look like from the outside? I hope that gives a reasonable indication of what the idea was for this base. Basically, I'm going for a International Space Station sort of design. The solar panels, the wings, will double in length, and there will be solar panels along all of the 4 double length wings there. In the middle here, we've got the main cabin area, which is where in the real ISS, that's where they live. And then here I've just started on sort of that central vertical column that is fairly iconic for the design as well. And then this area will probably get used for things like microverses and and those large multi-blocks, whereas inside the actual main cabin area here will be more of the active single block stuff. And room with a view. Very nice. So that's what I have been working on between episodes, and frankly spent quite a while on, but I think it has really done a lot for setting us up for continuing on at this point with our passive production. I feel like that was 40 before when we looked at it. I sure hope the epoxy hasn't stopped again. It often seems to stop, and there's always something I have to go back and troubleshoot. But yes, showing you plastic boards. Oh, I think that's used for refined circuits and which is the final tier 1 circuit. So we do actually need to keep that for the refined circuits. And then the refined circuits are used for some of the various things that we frequently have to use, like the 1K ME storage components and data models, item filters. Oh yeah, and the processors, and I think there was something else as well. But yes, so that's why I automated the plastic circuit boards, even though we're well beyond that tier. But all that said, what are we going to work on today is the question. So I should probably go back and take a look at these various things, and like numismatic power, I can do that. Farming station, I can do that. I've got a farming station. Sulfur dust, well, there's sulfur dust in the system. That's no problem at all. Perfect. And then pyrolysis products, well, I would have to actually go back and do that, as well as which the pyrolysis products will potentially allow me to increase our epoxy and or make it non-dependent on oil. But let us head back into our mid-game section, because what we probably want to do, in fact, what we probably should do, is try to push through to our nano circuits so that we're not so reliant on the microprocessor mainframes. Mainframes are always by far the most expensive version, and so if we can push that on to being arrays instead, then that's at least a tier better. Transistors, diodes, we're already automatically making. RAM, we're already making. Lumium, okay, tungsten, steel, fiber reinforced. So we're making fiber reinforced, no problem there. Tungsten, steel, we're just getting to the point where that blast furnace is going to fire up. Lumium is going to be where the problem is, because lumium requires Primal Mana and lumium blend. Lumium blend's easy: tin alloy, sterling silver, energized clathrate, and luminescence. We could probably pull that off. And Primal Mana, but I haven't yet set up any of these blast furnaces to deal with the products there. So fluid input hatch, good, we'll need some of those. We will need output bus, and we might as well get some more of those crafted. I saw that crafted very quickly. Now input bus, probably ULVs, because that only has a single input slot. And then let's put a fluid input hatch on these three, because we're going to have 3 different products that need Primal Mana. We are going to have signalum, although I do note that those say tungsten steel. It's only the mana infused ingot that could actually be made here in this particular blast furnace. So how about instead I think this furnace is going to be tungsten steel, and then this will just continue making the things that it can. I might just bump this so that it starts running. There we go. And so we've got some tungsten steel actually being produced. Tungsten is still made faster than tungsten steel, so although it is limited by the speed with which the tungsten is actually made over here, which is our limiting factor. Still, once that gets down to 800, it'll stop using it up. So, anyway, for now we'll make mana infused ingots here, so we need some blast furnaces. Move this out of the way, put that there. Okay, we need a blast furnace, we need a control circuit on this, and then that control circuit is going to be inverted. We need level emitters. Give me that control circuit, level emitters, and flux cable, and then finally we need ME conduits. Good, and probably we're going to need atom conduits. Thinking about it, we do have tungsten steel there, so the question is, can we make at least 16 here? That'll use 128 tungsten steel. So let's take that a step further. 36, 288, fine. And then that'll allow us to make 3 blast furnaces there using tungsten steel. So we'll get that crafting at least so that we can come back and work on that later on. In the meantime, ME conduits there. This is going to be set to. Let me put the Primal Mana. I think. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So now what we want is a mana infused ingot. And we want to tell it that it should always have, let's say, 512 in stock. Now, if we grab a few storage buses, then we can throw that on the front here. And, we can grab our ULV, and look at missing an output bus. Yep, it's just missing an output bus. Okay. Good. Now that should form. Perfect. And then if we pop back upstairs, we need item conduits. And we are going to need item filters. Perfect. Now, we also need some facades. Painted with Vena. Good. Now, if we go here, this gets to input mana infused metal dust on brown, and then it gets to extract on white, because white always means just push it back into the system. And then we also are going to need, in this instance, fluid conduits, because it needs to input into there. Now we want a fluid filter. Good, and then the fluid filter gets to go there, and we can't grab that primal mana, we need this primal mana. Perfect. Good. And so that'll insert, doesn't need to extract. Perfect. Now we just need to run a fluid conduit because we don't yet have one. Right, I see. Let's grab our Yetta wrench so that we can clean that up. In fact, we don't need that fluid conduit. How about we put it there so that it runs along that same channel, and then this facade can be replaced with that Vena. Good. Facade. Perfect. So that should just work. All we need to do now is we need to set, okay, this interface to have the mana infused dust here, and then that will import into here. Perfect. And we can put this, all this other stuff we've got here. And then what's going on here? You need to be, if that's less than 512, then you turn on Why is it idling? Oh, because it's not getting the fluid. So what I do need is to set it up so that we're producing. So fluid extractor, we want one of those. Let me just take a quick look over here. Yep, that still says 40. So obviously there's an issue with our epoxy production. For the time being, all of our fluid production is still over in the void base, and frankly, that oil rig there is that tall and goes all the way down to here. So I think it probably stays in the void world here. But let's try to figure out what's going on here. It's producing oil. Fine. So if it's producing oil, let's take a look here. The distillation tower is running. Naphtha presumably is being produced. None of these are actually clogged, so any output that they produce is going into the system. So then here, why is there epoxy? Oh, this guy here is completely full of nitro diesel. I thought that I had turned off my guy that was making nitro diesel actually. Bioglycerol, fluid extractor. Which one makes nitro diesel? Biomass, nitro diesel. So what if this stops extracting, and then we need a tank that can grab that nitro diesel. There we go. Now epoxy biodiesel glycerol is now being pulled back into the system. Good. And then we'll grab that spare nitro diesel as well, and we'll void that. Perfect. Now if that's been voided, good, then that can go there. Now that should get epoxy running again. Perfect. Which means we should start getting epoxy circuit boards. We've got epoxy sheets, which should then be getting used up to make epoxy circuit boards. Perfect. So the number of times this system is clogged, I really need to work on reworking it and or replacing it. And frankly, there is over here a whole wing that hasn't even been built, which probably will be my fluid manipulation wing, because this will be the AE2 wing, and I'll have to move some things from there. This will be the DML wing and or passive resource generation, and then this will be the passive component production and smelting and such. So anyway, let's take a look. Tungsten, probably those are all finished, looks like. Good. Let's quickly throw this down. Now we've got enough to actually do that much. Good. Perfect. Now if we grab our blast furnaces. Did I just put the blast furnaces away? Yes, I did. Okay, perfect. 1, 2. Actually, what I do need, I need that fluid extractor, which I think I told it to make. Perfect. That gets to go here, and it needs to be fed with Primal Mana, with Mana Dust. Perfect. So, although, actually, let's take that a step back. What we need is we need to automatically produce Mana Dust, and to make Mana Dust, we're going to need these various Erothium, Cryothium, Petrothium, and whatever the one I didn't say, on Autocraft. So saltpeter we can get from the thermal elemental matter. Oh, yes, okay, so I'll show you this. Thermal is currently producing just those 3 rods. We might need some more loot fabricators for the other, like the snowballs and the saltpeter. Although I can just pulverize sandstone for that. Sulfur we've already got in large supply. Petroleum is just obsidian dust, which we can pulverize obsidian, and cryothium needs snowballs, which we can just make in a glacial precipitator or a fluid solidifier. So we're probably fine with just what we've got. Okay. Cool, so what we're going to need then is for all of those, we are going to need at least 1 extra machine, I think. So we're going to need a pulverizer. We're already making sandstone, so just a pulverizer, which we've actually got a spare sitting there, because past Wingot was quite smart. Now you need sandstone. Gets to go to there on brown and extract on black. Perfect. Now we need some drawers, and we are going to need some downgrades. And let's put our key here. Perfect. Now you downgrade there, and we also will need some power. I'm surprised I don't have any endstone cable on me. Perfect. And so then that will make our saltpeter, which can then go up here. That's extracting, that just needs to insert. Perfect. Good, and at that point we're getting saltpeter, and saltpeter redstone we're getting automatically. Blitz powder we can make in another pulverizer, so we are going to need a few pulverizers, because we will need to convert all 4 of them into their respective dusts or powders. We almost have enough to make the pulverizers with the epoxy circuit boards that we've got. In fact, by this point we can probably it's so close, request that, and then it will have enough to actually craft. Perfect. But then there's other machines that we're going to need as well. So I think it's probably a good time for me to take a break between episodes. Thank you for watching. Stay happy and healthy, and I hope to see you in the next one.